Hello, my name is Kingston Miller, 38 years old, a day laborer hauling goods and a night security guard living in the heart of Detroit, a city people say is where the American dream gets lost in dark alleys. I don't have much, just a rundown apartment in a working-class neighborhood, a few worn-out sets of clothes, and an 8-year-old daughter named Diana, the only light left in my life. My wife Tracy left me and Diana 6 months ago. Not because she wanted to, but because a cruel lung cancer took her away. I still remember Tracy's eyes, weak but full of love, as she held my hand for the last time in the hospital, her voice a whisper. Take care of Diana, Kingston. Don't let her grow up in the dark. Detroit isn't a place for dreams. This city, with its abandoned factories, pothole-ridden streets, and poor neighborhoods where people scrape by on welfare, has a way of reminding you that life isn't easy. I grew up here, in a neighborhood where police sirens rang out more often than birds sang. My parents, Earl and Martha Miller, still live there, in an old wooden house with peeling walls and a chipped tile roof. They survive on Social Security and a bit of pocket change from selling secondhand goods at the flea market. I've never blamed them because I know they did everything they could to raise me. I work 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. During the day, I drive a delivery truck for a transport company, sweating under the scorching sun or shivering in the bone-chilling Michigan winter. In the late afternoon, I put on a security guard uniform and stand watch at a cold office building from 4 in the afternoon until 10 at night. The job isn't demanding, but I don't care for it. It's a place where men in suits walk past without ever glancing at me. My paycheck barely covers rent, food, and making sure Diana has a clean school uniform. That's it. No savings, no lofty hopes. Diana is all I have. She's like her mother, from her slightly curly brown hair to her big round eyes that always spark with curiosity. Diana is smart, excels in school, and is so well behaved that sometimes I wonder what I did to deserve a daughter like her. But since Tracy passed, I've noticed the light in her eyes dimming. She's quieter now, often sitting by the window, lost in thought, clutching the cloth doll her mother made for her. I want to be there for Diana more, to hold her when she cries, but I don't have the time. 2 jobs drain my energy and my mind. All I can do is try, hoping that one day I'll give Diana a better life. When Tracy passed, I couldn't leave Diana alone at home. Our apartment isn't safe, and I couldn't afford a babysitter. So I sent Diana to live with my parents in their poor neighborhood, over an hour's drive from my workplace. My parents love Diana, but they're old, their health is frail, and their neighborhood isn't ideal for a child. The trash-strewn alleys, graffiti-covered walls, and shouts from older kids make me worry every time I leave. But I had no other choice. It's only temporary, I tell myself, just until I figure something out. Every morning I wake up at 4, slip into my familiar work clothes, pack Diana's school books, and carry her, still half asleep, to the back seat of the car. I drive through Detroit's empty streets, stopping at a small coffee shop near my parents' place to grab a cheap black coffee and a sandwich for lunch. Old Joe, the shop owner, always greets me with a tired smile. "Keep going, Kingston," he often says. "You're a good man. The heavens won't let you down." I nod, but I don't put much stock in his comforting words. The heavens might not let me down, but Detroit has never shown mercy. The transport job isn't easy. I haul heavy crates, electronics, frozen food, you name it, up and down the truck in sweltering heat or pouring rain. My co-workers, mostly middle-aged guys like me, don't talk much. We work, get paid, and go back to our own worries, but I prefer this job over security. As a guard, I stand in one place watching people live the kind of life I can only dream of. They drive shiny cars, wear expensive clothes, and talk about vacations in Europe. Meanwhile, I'm just thinking about how to pay this month's electric bill. When my security shift ends at 10 p.m., I race to my parents' house to pick up Diana. She's usually waiting for me on the front steps, clutching her school bag, her eyes lighting up when she sees me. "Daddy!" she squeals, running to hug my legs. Those moments are the only medicine that keeps me going. I hug her back, trying to hide my exhaustion. "What did you learn today?" I ask. though sometimes I'm too worn out to hear her full answer. My parents, Earl and Martha, do their best to care for Diana. My mom, Martha, cooks simple meals like bean soup or meat sandwiches for her. My dad, Earl, loves telling stories about his days as a mechanic, though I know most of them are made up. They love Diana, but I see the helplessness in their eyes. They're old, and this neighborhood isn't the place to raise a bright kid like Diana. I feel guilty every time I leave, but I tell myself I have no choice. 6 months after Tracy's passing, I started noticing changes in Diana. She no longer chatters about school like she used to. She often complains of being tired, saying her head hurts or she feels dizzy. I'm worried, but my parents reassure me. She's just growing, Kingston, my mom says softly. She's studying hard and missing her mom. Let her rest, and she'll be fine. I want to believe them. Want to believe it's just a phase, but I have a bad feeling I can't shake. One evening, I pick Diana up as usual. She's sitting on the old armchair in my parents' living room, her eyes staring blankly at the floor. Diana, what's wrong? I ask, kneeling in front of her. She looks up, giving a weak smile. I'm okay, Daddy, just a little tired. Her voice is so small, like she's hiding something. I glance at my parents, but they just shake their heads. She's fine, Kingston, my dad says. Probably just the cold weather, don't worry too much. That night, after Diana falls asleep, I sit by her side, watching her small face. I think of Tracy, how she always knew how to make Diana laugh, how she sang lullabies to her every night. I hold Diana's hand and whisper, I won't let you suffer, sweetheart, I promise. But I don't know how long I can keep that promise. The next day, I drop Diana off at my parents' before heading to work. On the way, she tells me about a math test she aced. I smile and ruffle her hair, but my heart feels heavy. I start noticing small things. How Diana walks slower than usual. How she rubs her temples when she thinks I'm not looking. I tell myself I'll take her to a doctor, even though I know medical bills could ruin me. But I can't lose Diana. Not after Tracy. I can't lose anyone else. At the transport company, a co-worker named Marcus pulls me aside. Kingston, you okay? He asks, his voice low. Marcus is a big guy, always cheerful, but today he looks at me with concern. You look like you're about to collapse. What's going on? I shake my head, not wanting to share. Just tired. Diana's a bit sick, but it's probably nothing. Marcus nods, but his eyes are skeptical. If you need anything, just say so, he says before walking off. I thank him, but deep down I know no one can help me but myself. That afternoon, while I'm standing guard at the office building, my phone vibrates. It's my mom. Her voice on the line trembles like she's holding something back. Kingston, Diana, she collapsed at school. She's at the hospital now. Come quick. I freeze, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turn white. Collapsed? How, is she okay? I shout, but my mom just repeats, Come quick, Kingston. Hurry. Then she hangs up. My heart pounds like it's about to burst out of my chest. Diana, she's only 8. How could... I don't stop to think. I run out of the building, not bothering to tell the manager, only yelling to the other guard, I have an emergency. He looks at me, shocked, but I'm already out the door. Detroit's streets at night are cold and empty, the dim streetlights casting shadows on trash-strewn alleys. I floor the gas pedal, my old truck groaning under the strain. I see Diana collapsing, her big eyes filled with fear flashing in my mind. I see Tracy again lying in her hospital bed, her weak hand holding mine. Take care of Diana, Kingston. That promise now feels like a knife cutting into me. The hospital looms ahead, its harsh white lights blinding me. I rush into the emergency room, breathless, sweating despite the cold. The smell of antiseptic and the beeping of machines make my head spin. I find my parents at the end of a hallway, huddled together like two shadows. My mom, Martha, is holding her face, her shoulders shaking. My dad, Earl, stares at the floor, his hands clasped tightly. Where's Diana? I ask, my voice hoarse. My mom looks up, her eyes red. She's in there, Kingston. The doctors are checking on her. She points to a room with frosted glass doors. I push through, my heart pounding. Diana lies there on a stark white bed, her eyes closed, her face pale as if drained of life. An IV drips into her arm, and the steady beeping of the heart monitor feels like a hammer to my chest with every sound. A female doctor in her 40s with neatly tied hair approaches me. Her name tag reads Dr. Helen Carter. She looks at me, her expression serious but not cold. "Are you Diana Miller's father?" she asks. I nod, too afraid to speak, worried my voice might break. "Your daughter collapsed at school, but her condition is more serious than we initially thought," she says, her voice steady. "We found paralysis on her left side. Initial tests suggest neurological damage, possibly from a chemical agent like poisoning or a side effect of medication. Do you know if she's been exposed to anything unusual recently? Drugs, food, anything?" I shake my head, my mind blank. Drugs, poisoning? Diana's just a kid. She only eats what my mom cooks, drinks water and milk at school. How could... No, I don't know, I whisper, my voice fading. But when I glance at my parents standing in the corner of the room, I see my mom avoid my gaze and my dad clench his hands like he's hiding something. A chill runs down my spine. They know something, and I won't stop until I find out what. Dr. Carter stood there waiting for my answer about whether Diana had been exposed to anything unusual. But I didn't have an answer. Not because I didn't want to give one, but because I genuinely didn't know. And that made me tremble with anger and fear. "How's Diana doing?" I asked, my voice hoarse, trying to stay calm. Dr. Carter glanced at the medical chart in her hand. "She's stable, but the paralysis needs further monitoring. We'll run blood tests and an MRI to determine the cause. You should rest a bit, Mr. Miller. We'll contact you when we have results." She nodded, then turned away, leaving my daughter lying motionless on the hospital bed. I sat down beside Diana, clutching her small hand, hoping to transfer some warmth even though my own hands were ice cold. Then a fire of anger began to flare inside me. I stormed out to the hallway, approaching my parents with a steely gaze. "Mom, Dad, what's going on? How did Diana fall? Why is the doctor talking about poisoning or drugs?" My mom looked up, her eyes red and swollen, but she avoided my gaze. She just fell, Kingston. Maybe the floor was slippery or she was tired. Don't worry too much." Her voice trembled as if she were trying to convince herself. "Don't worry," I shouted, my voice echoing through the hallway. A few nurses at the reception desk turned to look, but I didn't care. "She's lying in there, paralyzed on one side, Mom. The doctor mentioned poisoning. You think I can just not worry?" My dad placed a hand on my mom's shoulder as if to shield her. "Calm down, Kingston," he said, his voice low but unconvincing. "We'll figure it out. It could be a mistake. Hospitals get things wrong sometimes." A mistake? I wanted to believe them, wanted to believe this was just an accident, that Diana would wake up and smile at me like before. But their eyes, the avoidance, the tension in every gesture sent a chill down my spine. I know my parents. They're not bad people. They raised me in a poor neighborhood, sacrificing everything to give me a better life. But right now, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were hiding something from me. That night, I didn't go back to my apartment. I stayed at the hospital, sitting by Diana's bed, holding her small hand. The heart monitor beeped steadily, but each sound was a reminder that I had failed. I promised Tracy I'd protect Diana, but now she lay here unmoving, and I didn't know why. I stroked her hair, whispering, "I'll find out, sweetheart. I'll do everything to make you better." My phone buzzed relentlessly that evening, calls and texts from the security team manager, but I didn't bother responding. My mind was consumed with one thing only. Diana, my little princess who was laughing and talking just yesterday, now lying motionless on a hospital bed with a brutal diagnosis of partial paralysis. The next morning, Dr. Carter called me into her office. She sat behind her desk wearing glasses, her tone still serious but softer than the day before. "We have the blood test results," she said. "There's evidence of an unusual chemical compound in Diana's system. It's not a common substance. It could be an experimental drug. Are you absolutely sure you don't know anything about this? I shook my head, my heart pounding. Experimental drug? What do you mean? Diana doesn't take anything except the vitamins my mom gives her. Dr. Carter frowned. Vitamins? She repeated. Can you bring those vitamins in for us to test? Sometimes unregulated products can cause issues. I nodded, but a storm was brewing in my mind. Vitamins. My mom had said she gave Diana vitamins to boost her immune system. I never questioned it, never checked. I had trusted them too much, been too exhausted by life to notice anything unusual. A wave of anger surged, not just at my parents, but at myself. I drove to my parents' house right after without warning. Their old wooden house appeared in the pale morning light of Detroit. The stench of garbage from the nearby alley hit my nose, and a dog barked somewhere in the distance. I knocked on the door hard enough to make it rattle. My mom opened it, her eyes puffy, her gray hair disheveled. Kingston, why are you here at this hour? How's Diana? She still hasn't woken up, I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. My dad was sitting in an armchair holding a coffee mug, but he set it down as soon as he saw me. I'm here to get the vitamins you gave Diana, I said, my voice firm. The doctor needs to test them. My mom's face paled, her hand clutching the edge of her shirt. Vitamins? Oh, right. Let me find them. She turned and walked to the kitchen, but I saw her hands trembling as she opened a drawer. My dad stood up, forcing a smile. Don't worry, Kingston, it's just vitamins. Your mom got them from the pharmacy nearby. I didn't respond. I followed her into the kitchen, standing right behind her. The drawer was filled with old pill bottles, bandages, and a few supplement containers. But I noticed a small, brown, unlabeled bottle tucked in the corner. My mom deliberately passed over it, pulling out a bottle of vitamin C. Here, this is it, she said, her voice shaky. I reached past her, grabbing the unlabeled brown bottle. What's this? I asked, my voice icy. My mom froze, her lips moving but no words coming out. My dad rushed into the kitchen, his voice urgent. It's just a supplement, Kingston. Nothing to worry about. Nothing? I roared, holding up the bottle. Diana's in the hospital, paralyzed on one side, and you're saying this is nothing? Tell me the truth, Mom, Dad, what is this? My mom burst into tears, collapsing into a chair. My dad sighed, his frail shoulders trembling. We didn't mean to hurt her, Kingston, he said, his voice hoarse. They said the drug was safe. They said it would make Diana stronger, smarter. They paid us. We needed the money. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. They? Who's they? I shouted. Who paid you? What did you give Diana? My mom sobbed, unable to look at me. My dad lowered his head, his voice barely a whisper. Neurovance, a pharmaceutical company. They came to the neighborhood, talked about a drug trial program. They promised $10,000. We thought it was an opportunity. $10,000. I gripped the bottle, wanting to smash it on the floor to break everything in sight. But I just stood there, my mind reeling. Diana, my 8-year-old daughter, had been turned into a guinea pig for $10,000. I looked at my parents, the people who raised me, the ones I trusted more than anyone. Now they were like strangers. I took the bottle to the hospital immediately and handed it to Dr. Carter. She held it, frowning. No label, no information. I'll send it for testing right away, she said. But Mr. Miller, if this is an unapproved experimental drug, this is a serious issue. Do you know which company is behind it? Neurovance, I said, my voice dry. My parents said it was Neurovance. Dr. Carter wrote down the name, her expression growing more serious. I've heard of them, she said. A new pharmaceutical company, but there are some bad rumors. If this is their drug, we need to investigate thoroughly. I nodded, but inside I wanted to scream. I felt betrayed, not just by my parents, but by this whole world, a world where the poor are exploited, where my daughter became a victim just because we couldn't afford better. But I couldn't stop. I had to find the truth, had to protect Diana. In the days that followed, I started investigating. I asked around the neighborhood, talking to neighbors as poor as we were. An old woman, Miss May, who lived a few houses down from my parents, said her son had also been approached by Neurovance. They gave us money, said it was a supplement, she said, her voice trembling. But my boy started getting headaches, then dropped out of school. I was too scared to say anything. Another man, Reggie, who worked at a nearby auto shop, told me about strangers in suits coming to the neighborhood, handing out flyers and promising money. They targeted the poorest families, Reggie said. They knew we needed the cash, knew we wouldn't ask too many questions. Each story was a knife to my heart. Diana wasn't the only one. How many other kids in this neighborhood were suffering because of their parents' poverty? How many had stayed silent out of fear? I returned to my apartment, sitting in the dark, the unlabeled bottle on the table in front of me. I thought of Diana, of Tracy, of the promise I hadn't kept. And I knew no matter how dangerous it was, I wouldn't stop until Neurovance paid for what they'd done. I sat in my tiny apartment, the dim light from an old desk lamp casting shadows on the unlabeled bottle sitting alone on the table. It was small, unremarkable, but now it was evidence of the crime that had left my daughter Diana motionless in a hospital bed. I gripped the bottle tightly, the cold glass biting into my palm. Neurovance. The name echoed in my head like a curse. They had turned my little girl into a guinea pig, and my parents, the people I once trusted most, had let it happen. I wanted to scream, to smash everything in sight, but I just sat there, my mind spinning with questions that had no answers. How could I fight a company like Neurovance? A working-class guy like me with no money, no power, only anger and love for my daughter. But I couldn't stop. Not now, when Diana needed me most. In the days that followed, I started taking action. I didn't know what I was doing, only that I had to find more evidence. Dr. Carter had sent the bottle for testing, but she warned me. If Neurovance is really behind this, they won't let you expose them easily, Mr. Miller. Be careful. Her words weighed on my chest like a stone, but I had no choice. I had to keep going. I started in my parents' neighborhood, where trash-strewn alleys and graffiti-covered walls told the story of poverty. I knocked on doors, asking neighbors I suspected had been approached by Neurovance. Most of them avoided me, shutting their doors as soon as I mentioned the name. But a few, like Miss May and Reggie, agreed to talk. They spoke of men in suits, flyers advertising free supplements, and promises of money. They knew we needed cash, Reggie said, his voice bitter. They came here looking at us like prey. I wrote everything down, even if only in an old, tattered notebook. Names, dates, whatever they could recall about Neurovance. I didn't know if these notes were worth anything, but I had to do something. Every night after visiting Diana in the hospital, I sat in my apartment rereading my scrawled lines, searching for a clue. Diana still hadn't woken up, but Dr. Carter said she showed signs of responding to my voice. Talk to her, she advised. She needs to know her dad is here. Each time I held Diana's hand, I told her about the days we spent with Tracy, picnics in the park, the times she giggled as her mom sang lullabies. But I also whispered to her, I'll make them pay, Diana. I promise. That promise felt heavier than ever. Trouble started in the second week. One evening, as I left the hospital to head home, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging, Miller. Think about your family. I froze in the parking lot, my breath coming in short gasps. The message was brief, but it felt like a cold blade pressed against my throat. I looked around, seeing only the dim streetlights and the darkness surrounding me. Someone was watching me. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was just an empty threat. But the next morning, when I arrived at the transport company, the manager called me into his office. Kingston, we have to cut staff, he said, his voice flat. You've done good work, but you know how it is. Tough economy. I looked at him, a middle-aged man with shifty eyes. I knew this wasn't about the economy. Someone had pressured him. I left the office without a word, but the anger inside me flared like a wildfire. That night, my security job was gone too. The shift manager, a guy named Carl, just shook his head when I showed up. Sorry, Kingston, orders from above. You're off the roster. I wanted to scream, to punch him in the face, but I just turned away, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Both jobs, my only means of survival, vanished in a single day. I knew who was behind it. Neurovance. When I got back to my apartment, I found the door pried open. Nothing was stolen, but the place was a mess, a warning. A chair was overturned, papers scattered on the floor, and on the bathroom mirror, someone had written in red lipstick, "Stop." I stood there, breathing heavily, feeling like the world was closing in around me. I wanted to call the police, but I knew they wouldn't do anything. In Detroit, people like me were never heard. I called my parents, my voice trembling with rage. "They know," I said. "Neurovance, they're threatening me." My mom sobbed over the phone. "Stop, Kingston," she pleaded. "They're dangerous. If you keep going, they won't stop at you. They'll come for all of us." My dad cut in, his voice hoarse. "Listen to your mom, son. We were wrong. But now's not the time to risk your life." I hung up, unwilling to hear more. I understood their fear, but I couldn't forgive them. Not when Diana was still in the hospital, not when I saw her eyes, weak but trying to smile every time I visited. I sat on the floor, my head against the wall, fighting back tears. I was angry at my parents, at Neurovance, but most of all at myself. I had let Diana end up in this situation. I had been too trusting, too exhausted to notice the signs, but I wouldn't give up. If Neurovance thought they could scare me into silence, they were wrong. I started reaching out to other families in the neighborhood whose children had been affected. I organized a secret meeting at Miss May's house, a place no one would suspect. Only 5 families showed up, all nervous, their eyes filled with distrust. "They'll kill us if we speak out," a mother named Carla whispered, clutching her trembling son. "But we can't stay silent forever," I said, my voice firm. "They hurt our kids. If we don't fight, how many more children will suffer?" They looked at me, a few nodding, but I saw the fear in their eyes. I was scared too, but I couldn't let fear win. I told them about Diana, the unlabeled bottle, the threatening messages. "We need evidence," I said. "Medical records, testimonies, anything. If we speak out together, they can't silence us all." But Neurovance didn't let me be. One night, as I drove home from the meeting, a black SUV tailed me. I saw it in the rearview mirror, its headlights glaring, staying close even as I sped up. My heart pounded, sweat dripping down my face. I turned into an alley, hoping to lose them, but the SUV kept following. Finally, I pulled into an empty lot, gripping my phone, ready to call 911, even though I knew it would be useless. 2 men stepped out of the SUV. One was tall, wearing a leather jacket, his face cold as stone. The other was smaller, but his eyes were sharp like a knife. "You're Kingston Miller, right?" the tall one said, his voice low. I nodded, trying to stay calm. "This is your last warning," he said. "Stop, or you and your kid won't see the sun again." I wanted to lunge at him, to punch his menacing face, but I knew I didn't stand a chance. Alone, unarmed in this empty lot, I was just a 38-year-old worker, tired and worn out. I clenched my fists, my nails digging deep into my palms, trying to hold back my rage. "I'm not stopping," I said, my voice hoarse but firm. "You want to scare me? Go ahead and try." The smaller man smirked, pulling a switchblade from his pocket, its steel glinting under the streetlight. "You're stubborn, Miller," he said, stepping closer. "But you'll regret this." I backed up, my back hitting the car door, my heart pounding. I thought of Diana, her pale face on the hospital bed, and Tracy, her voice echoing in my head. "Take care of Diana, Kingston." I couldn't give up, but right now I didn't know how I'd get out of this. Suddenly, headlights cut through the darkness. An engine roared and an old pickup truck stopped a few meters away. The door swung open and Marcus, my former co-worker, stepped out, holding a long iron bar from the truck's bed. "Hey, what's going on here?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the quiet space. The 2 men turned, their eyes hesitant. Marcus was tall, broad-shouldered, and the iron bar in his hand wasn't for show. "I don't want trouble," he said, stepping closer to me, his gaze sharp on the 2 men. "But if you touch my friend, we'll have a problem." The smaller man backed off, lowering his knife. The tall one looked at Marcus, then at me as if weighing his options. "You're lucky, Miller," he growled. "But this isn't the last you'll hear from us." They returned to their SUV, the engine roared, and the vehicle disappeared into the darkness. I stood there, breathing heavily, sweat streaming down my forehead. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder, his eyes worried. "You okay, Kingston?" "What the hell was that?" I told him everything, about Diana, Neurovance, the unlabeled bottle, and the threatening messages. Marcus listened, his brows furrowed. When I finished, he sighed, shaking his head. "You're reckless, but I get it. If it were my kid, I'd do the same." He paused, then continued. "Look, I know someone who can help. Sarah Coleman, a human rights lawyer. She's taken on big companies before, not afraid of power. I can take you to her now. She often works late at a coffee shop nearby." I nodded, feeling like I'd been thrown a lifeline in the middle of a storm. "Let's go," I said, my voice hoarse. We got into Marcus's truck, driving through Detroit's dark streets. The coffee shop was on the outskirts, a small place with warm yellow lights, a stark contrast to the cold atmosphere of my neighborhood. Sarah Coleman sat in a corner, a laptop and a black coffee in front of her. She was younger than I expected, about 30, with her hair tied up and sharp but not cold eyes. Marcus introduced me and I told her everything, from Diana, the bottle, to the encounter in the alley. Sarah listened, jotting notes in a small notebook. When I handed her the unlabeled bottle, she held it up, frowning. "If this is an unapproved experimental drug, we can sue Neurovance," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "But we need more evidence. Medical records, testimonies from other families, and if we're lucky, an insider witness. Are you ready to go all the way, Mr. Miller?" I nodded, but in my heart I was thinking of Diana, still lying motionless in the hospital, her eyes closed, her small hand cold every time I held it. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, my voice rough. "Just make them pay for what they did to her." Sarah looked at me, her gaze softening. "I understand, Kingston, but you need to be careful. The threatening messages, the attack in the alley, that's just the beginning. They won't stop." Marcus, standing by the door, arms crossed, scanned the cars passing by outside. He didn't say much, but his presence gave me a sliver of comfort. After the encounter in the empty lot, Marcus had become the only person I trusted besides Sarah. "I'll be here," he said as we left the shop. "Call if anything happens." The days that followed were relentless. Sarah guided me on how to gather evidence legally. "We need Diana's medical records and those of the other children," she said. "Ask Dr. Carter for copies of the test results. And if possible, convince the families in your neighborhood to come forward as witnesses." I returned to the hospital and met with Dr. Carter. She agreed to provide Diana's records but warned me. "The hospital's getting pressure from outside. Someone's been calling, asking about Diana's case. I don't know who they are, but you need to act fast." I went back to the poor neighborhood, knocking on doors, trying to persuade families to speak out. A few agreed, like Miss May and Carla, but most were too scared. "They'll kill us," a father named Jose whispered, clutching his son who was coughing incessantly. "They know where we live, Kingston." I understood their fear because I felt it too. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, expecting another message from Neurovance. But I couldn't stop, not when the image of Diana lying in a hospital bed haunted me every night. Marcus became my biggest ally. He helped me contact families, drove me around the city, and kept an eye out for suspicious cars. One afternoon, as we sat in his truck, Marcus looked at me, his voice low. "Kingston, you know they won't play fair, right? If they come for you again, you need to protect yourself." I nodded, knowing he was right. The threats, the break-in at my apartment, the attack in the alley, all of it showed Neurovance would stop at nothing to silence me. "We need guns," Marcus said, his voice firm as we pulled up to a small gun shop on the edge of the city. The shop sat in a rundown neighborhood, its neon sign flickering with the words, "Guns and Ammo." I hesitated, my heart pounding. I'd never held a gun, never thought I'd have to, but the memory of those two men in the empty lot, The glinting knife and the threat against Diana left me no choice. Inside the shop, the smell of gun oil and metal hit my nose. A man with a bushy beard stood behind the counter, his eyes sizing us up. "What do you want?" he asked gruffly. Marcus stepped forward, speaking as if they knew each other. "2 handguns, easy to use, and ammo," he said. I stood behind him, feeling like I was stepping into an alien world. The man handed us 2 Glocks, showing us how to hold them, how to load them. I held the gun, its weight heavy in my hand, cold like the unlabeled bottle I'd found at my parents' house. "You don't have to shoot anyone," Marcus said as we left the shop, each of us hiding a gun in our jackets. "But if they come for you, you need to be ready." I nodded, but inside I was scared. Not for myself, but for the fear that I might fail, that I couldn't protect Diana. Meanwhile, Sarah worked tirelessly. She contacted a nurse at the hospital who revealed that at least 7 other children from the poor neighborhood had been admitted with symptoms like Diana's: headaches, dizziness, and neurological damage. "I saw them handing out bottles just like the one you found," the nurse whispered over the phone, her voice trembling. I didn't dare say anything, but I knew something was wrong. Sarah photocopied medical records, documented testimonies, and began building a case. She also found an old article about Neurovance mentioning allegations of illegal drug trials in poor neighborhoods, but the case had been dropped for lack of concrete evidence. Every night, Sarah sent me updates through encrypted emails. "They're watching us," she wrote. "Don't use your phone anymore." I felt like I was living in a thriller movie, but this was real life, and I was no hero. I was just a father trying to save his daughter. Trouble came on a Wednesday evening while Marcus and I were at my apartment going over Sarah's notes. Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "In trouble. Someone's outside my house. Come quick." My blood ran cold. "Let's go," Marcus said, grabbing his keys. We raced out to his truck, speeding through Detroit's dark streets. Sarah's house was in a quiet neighborhood, but when we arrived, I saw a black car parked out front, its headlights off. We stopped a few houses away, turning off our lights, and watched. 2 men stood at Sarah's door, one holding a baseball bat, the other pounding on the door. I heard Sarah shout from inside, "Get out, or I'm calling the police." But I knew the police wouldn't get here in time, not in Detroit. Marcus signaled to me, pointing to the gun in my jacket. "Stay here," he whispered. "If anything happens, fire into the air." I wanted to protest, but he was already slipping out of the truck, the iron bar from before still in his hand. I gripped the gun, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. Marcus approached the men, moving silently like a shadow. "Hey!" he shouted, startling them both. The one with the bat swung, but Marcus was faster, slamming the iron bar into the man's arm, making the bat clatter to the ground. The other lunged, but Marcus shoved him down, yelling, "Stay down, or I'll crack your skulls." I ran out of the truck, not thinking anymore. Sarah opened the door, her face pale, clutching a briefcase full of documents. "They wanted this," she said, her voice trembling. I saw a bruise on her arm, a mark from a struggle. Marcus kept the 2 men pinned to the ground, the iron bar raised. "Call the police," he said. I dialed 911, but before the police arrived, the men broke free, ran to their black car, and sped off. Sarah was panting, clutching the briefcase tightly. "This is everything we have," she said. "Medical records, testimonies, and an email from the nurse. She's agreed to be a witness." I looked at her, filled with gratitude but also fear. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded, but her eyes said she was scared, just like me. That night, we sat in Sarah's apartment, going over the documents. Marcus stood guard by the door, the iron bar still in his hand. "They know what we have," Sarah said, "but if we go public, they won't dare touch us anymore." I nodded, ready to take the next steps. A few days later, Sarah filed a lawsuit against Neurovance. The case was submitted to federal court, accusing the company of conducting illegal neurological drug trials on children in impoverished neighborhoods, violating medical ethics and the law. Sarah had contacted a non-governmental organization focused on children's rights, and they agreed to provide legal support. Nurse Janet, though terrified, gave a detailed testimony about how unlabeled bottles were distributed to families in the neighborhood, accompanied by cash and promises of absolute safety. The medical records of Diana and 7 other children showed the same chemical compound, an unapproved experimental drug causing severe neurological damage. But Neurovance didn't sit idly by. As soon as the lawsuit was filed, their attacks grew more sophisticated. One morning, I received an unmarked envelope containing a photo of Diana in her hospital bed, with a handwritten note. "Stay silent or she won't get the chance to wake up." I trembled, not from fear but from rage. I showed the photo to Sarah, and she immediately contacted the police. But in Detroit, the police only took a report and said, "We'll investigate." I knew they wouldn't do anything, not when Neurovance had protectors in high places. Sarah was targeted too. One night, her small suburban office was broken into, her computer destroyed, but fortunately she had backed up all the data in the cloud. "They want us to be scared," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "But the more they do this, the more they prove we're on the right track." I looked at her, a young woman daring to take on an entire corporation, and wondered where she found such strength. Perhaps, like me, she had reasons she couldn't abandon. The first court hearing took place on a freezing winter day in an old courtroom with dark wooden walls and rows of crowded benches. The families from the neighborhood, despite their fear, showed up: Miss May, Carla, Jose, and a few others. They sat in the back, their eyes filled with both hope and anxiety. Sarah stood before the judge, presenting each piece of evidence: the unlabeled bottle, the test results, Nurse Janet's testimony. I sat beside her, clutching my hands, trying to hide my trembling. Across from us was Neurovance's legal team, men in expensive suits, their eyes cold and mechanical. They countered every accusation. "There's no concrete evidence that Neurovance distributed the drugs," their lead lawyer, a slick middle-aged man with a smooth voice, declared. "These unlabeled bottles could have come from anywhere. These families living in impoverished areas might have bought drugs from the black market." I wanted to stand up and scream at him, but Sarah placed a hand on my shoulder, whispering, "Stay calm, Kingston. They're trying to provoke us." The trial dragged on for weeks, each day a battle. Neurovance hired experts to dispute the test results, claiming the chemical in the victim's blood could be from environmental pollution in Detroit. They even presented forged documents alleging that my parents and other families had voluntarily participated in the trials with signed consent forms. I looked at my parents, sitting in a corner of the courtroom, their eyes downcast, heavy with guilt. I was still angry at them, but I couldn't deny the pain in their hearts. They had been wrong, but they were also victims of poverty. A turning point came when Nurse Janet testified. She stood before the court, her voice trembling but clear, recounting how Neurovance representatives came to the hospital, instructing staff to distribute drugs without disclosing their ingredients. "They said it was a charity program," she said, tears in her eyes. "But I saw more and more children admitted with the same symptoms. I couldn't stay silent anymore." Her testimony sent a ripple through the courtroom. Neurovance's lawyers tried to twist her words, but Sarah was prepared, defending Janet with sharp questions and irrefutable medical evidence. After that hearing, the media took notice. A few articles emerged calling the lawsuit Detroit's biggest pharmaceutical scandal. Public pressure began to shake Neurovance, and some of their lower-level employees started contacting Sarah, providing insider information. But as Sarah had predicted, the real masterminds, the executives at the top of Neurovance and their political protectors, remained out of reach. They had money, power, and the ability to cover their tracks. The verdict came after 3 grueling months. The court found Neurovance guilty of conducting illegal drug trials, ordering them to compensate the victims' families and shut down the trial program. A few mid-level employees were arrested, but as Sarah had foreseen, the top executives escaped punishment through connections and expensive lawyers. The families in the neighborhood received modest compensation. Not enough to change their lives, but enough to cover medical bills and offer a sliver of hope. My parents received a light sentence for cooperating with the authorities, but they couldn't meet my eyes as they left the courtroom. I visited them one last time before they went to prison. My mom cried, hugging me, repeating, "I'm sorry, Kingston." I only wanted what was best for Diana. My dad stood silently, his frail shoulders trembling. I looked at them, my heart heavy. "Your mistake cost Diana too much," I said, my voice hoarse. "I can forgive, but I can't forget. And we'll all have to live with that for the rest of our lives." I turned away, not looking back, but deep down I knew I still loved them, despite the lingering pain. Diana was discharged from the hospital a month after the trial. Dr. Carter said she would need long-term treatment, possibly for life, and her chances of walking normally were slim. I pushed her wheelchair out of the hospital, the spring sunlight shining on her small face. She looked up, giving a weak smile. "Dad, I want to go to the park," she said, her voice soft but full of hope. I nodded, tears silently falling. "All right, sweetheart." We went to the park near our home, where Tracy used to take Diana when she was little. I pushed her wheelchair along the path, sunlight filtering through the trees, casting shimmering patches on the ground. Diana held my hand, her small hand warm. "You did it, didn't you, Dad?" she asked, her big round eyes looking at me. I stopped, knelt in front of her, and brushed her hair. "I tried, sweetheart," I said, "and I'll never stop." Neurovance was still out there, its leaders still free, but I knew we had shaken them. I looked at Diana, her eyes shining like the sun, and I felt a spark of hope. We had fought, and though we hadn't won completely, we still had each other. I kept pushing the wheelchair, father and daughter holding hands, the sunlight streaming down, a symbol of hope, strength, and the unbreakable love between us.